Hi there everyone, so today's recipe is macaroni cheese with spinach. Again, like most of my recipes, it's quite an easy recipe to do. There is a few moving parts for this one, so you just need to be on your game to make sure you're getting each part going on at the right time as you make it. But as long as you prep everything prior, it's dead easy. It's just getting that prep in before you start cooking and all the parts fall into place just as you need them to. So let's crack on and do this. First up, we need to measure out 300 grams of spinach, and as with many of my other videos, I'm looking to demonstrate that it's equally valid in times of Brexit, in times of rising food costs, in times of COVID, in times of a war happening on Europe's eastern borders, that you can use frozen items and staples if you can't get fresh, and you're still going to get maybe not quite just as good results, but you're still going to get excellent results compared to the fresh. So 300 grams fresh or frozen spinach. If you need to, defrost your spinach in the microwave. Now you have a choice here of two different cheeses for your cheese sauce that we're going to be making. You can either use Gruyere or Comté cheese. Both have an exceptionally similar flavour profile, although not identical, but they're similar enough that both work really well in this recipe. This time I'm using Comté. Most of the time I use the Gruyere because that's the one I can pick up in Morrison's, whereas I need to pick up in Costco. But either one, and you're looking for 170 grams. And once we have 170 grams of cheese, all we're looking to do is to cube it into 1 centimetre squared or less cubes. That's because we're going to be adding these later and we want them to melt down quickly. So 1 centimetre cube, really the maximum. Less works just as well. Just go with what you're feeling comfortable with, how safe you feel using a knife in case you don't want to chop your cheese too small. And we're also going to need a cheddar. I like extra mature cheddar due to the strength of flavour, but feel free to go with just a mature, whichever one you prefer. But we're going to need 50 grams of this, and we're going to grate that up. Coarse grating's absolutely fine, you don't need to worry about going for fine grating, so coarsely grated. And we're going to need a couple of mustards. First up, into a ramekin, measure 1 teaspoon of Dijon Mustard. And to the same ramekin, but obviously with a clean teaspoon, you don't want to cross-contaminate here, we're going to add 2 teaspoons of wholegrain mustard. We're also going to require 60 grams of breadcrumbs. Now, you can buy breadcrumbs in the supermarket, but why buy them when you can make your own from bread in the house already? 1.5 slices of thick toasting bread is about the 60 grams that we need, so that's what you're going to use. 1.5 slices, 60 grams. Now, I have this little hand food processor here. Excuse the word bread on it, it's to get my son to start using that one, and he kept forgetting about it, so I tried to make it obvious. But anyway, I've got this little hand processor here, and that's what I'm going to make my breadcrumbs with. Next up, grab yourself 12 cherry tomatoes, and we're going to quarter these. Just make sure your knife's nice and sharp so that we're not crushing them under the weight of the knife, but we're getting a nice slice on them. So it's nice, ripe cherry tomatoes. And once they're quartered, set them aside because we won't need them till later, but it's better having them ready to go rather than running around halfway through and then something goes wrong. Now the tomatoes are prepared, we need to get our seasoning ready. So first up, we're looking for 2 teaspoons of salt into a ramekin, and to the same ramekin we're also going to add half a teaspoon of ground black pepper. We will also require 50 grams of vegan butter. You can see from the packet there, this Flora butter here, as I've mentioned on other videos, this is my preferred vegan butter because it operates exactly the same as dairy butter. There is no difference to how you use it and no difference to the weight ratios. Just treat it as if it was dairy butter that you're used to. Next up, we are going to require 750 millilitres of nut milk. The cashew nut milk here is really, really nice for the process. My favourite is actually hazelnut milk, but both Morrison's and Asda have stopped their own brand one, and the branded one at twice the price. It's not that much nicer, so the cashew one, lovely. And as there's absolutely no point dirtying a dish unless you have to, we're going to measure our plain flour straight into a pot. You're going to be using a medium-large sort of pot, not probably your very largest pot if you're a set of 4, but your second largest is the sort of pot size that we're looking for. And to this pot, we are now going to add our milk and our butter. You break your butter up just slightly rather than just one big lump. It will just let it melt easier when it goes in. And at this point, measure out 300 grams of dried macaroni, because this is something else, obviously, that we're also going to require. If you're using frozen spinach over fresh spinach, it will need to be defrosted by this stage. You'll either have done that in the microwave or you'll have let it defrost naturally, but you're going to have to drain off any of the liquid that you just saw in the bowl there. So just take it over the side of your sink and give it a little bit of squeeze to take out some of that excess water from the freezing. Now, irrespective of whether you're using frozen or whether you're using fresh spinach, you're now going to have to chop it up. If it's fresh spinach you're looking at, then look to see if you've got any large stalks that you need to remove. If it's frozen spinach, there's generally tends to be less large stalks in it. If you do find any that aren't chopping up, just take and discard them. We're looking for a nice fine chop throughout it, because when we cook this, we want it to break up and just give us strands of spinach throughout our pasta. And now that all the prep work is done, we can actually start cooking. So we're going to heat up our milk, our flour and our butter, and we're going to heat that at a medium temperature until it reaches the boil. And once it reaches the boil, we're going to simmer that for 3 minutes. And whilst we're cooking this at the simmer, you want to grab yourself a stiff whisk, and we just want to keep whisking it so we can break up the butter, we can get the flour from stopping clumping and get a nice smooth sauce as we go. And once your 3 minutes is over, you want to turn it down to a low heat, and you're going to add either your Comté or your Gruyere, whichever cheese it is you've opted to go with, and we're going to let all these chunks melt into it. And just after adding your cheese, we're going to add both of our mustards and we're going to add the seasoning. Now switch to a wooden spoon here or a really stiff spatula, whichever you prefer, because you're going to get clumping, as you can see it there from the pepper. It just sort of clumps up, and using a wooden spoon and pressing the back of it, or a really heavy duty spatula, pressing the back of it against your pot just helps break up those pepper clumps as you go. But keep stirring it, and just the heat and the stirring as well does it, but just to speed up the process. Back of the spoon, side of the pot, against the pepper. And once we have added all the cheese, the mustard, etc. to the sauce, we're going to, into a pan of already boiling salted water, add our pasta. Now, if you're looking for it al dente, which is with a bit of a bite, then you're going to cook it for 8 minutes. And if you're looking for a softer feel, you're going to cook it for 10 minutes, unless your packet instructions tell you differently. But most macaronis al dente is 8, and softer mouthfeel is 10 minutes. And once we have the pasta on and it's cooking away at a simmer to a boil, just make sure we go back to our cheese sauce. We don't want it burning, we don't want any of the pepper clumps that may still be hanging around to be there at the end. So keep giving it a wee stir just to get everything the way we want it, which will be a nice glossy sauce when we're done. In the final minute of your pasta, so that'll be 7 minutes if you're doing it al dente, or 9 minutes if you're doing it for the softer mouthfeel, unless your pack instructions say differently, you're going to take your spinach and you're going to add it to your pasta dish. And as soon as the pasta is ready, per how you are cooking it, we're going to drain both the pasta and the spinach into a colander. Just give it a dunt about to make sure that all the water's out of the pasta, because we don't want it too watery. So just bang it up and down a few times, sugar it about until you've got all the water out of it. And once the pasta is well drained, we're going to take and we're going to add it to a reasonably high walled oven dish. About a 3.5 litre dish is about perfect. Just take a spatula, get any of the rest of the spinach that may still be sticking to or not wanting to leave the colander, and drag it out and get it into the bowl. Then get everything a really good mix together. Be careful, the spinach will be trying to hold together, but that will start separating more once we add the cheese sauce. But initially just break it up a little bit with your spatula. And now take and add the cheese sauce, which should also be ready, and we're going to thoroughly mix it together. This is when the spinach will properly separate, but just make sure you're getting all your cheese sauce out of the pan as well. You've put in all the effort, so grab your spatula, go right round the side walls and mix it all together nice and thoroughly. And now scatter your cherry tomato quarters across the top of it. You're going to have a nice heavy coating of tomato quarters by the time we're done, but it just really adds pop to the overall dish when you're getting a bite into it. And follow the cherry tomatoes up with your breadcrumbs. Again, you're going to have a nice layer across the top. You shouldn't see much cheese sauce or any cheese sauce at all by the end between the tomatoes and the breadcrumbs. So nice good coating breadcrumbs all the way across. Now finish up with the cheddar cheese. You aren't going to get a full coating with this, but you're still going to have a reasonable coating, as you'll see by the time we've got to the end. So be careful how you sprinkle it, just so you've got cheese evenly spread across the entire top of the dish. And into an oven at a fan setting that's been preheated to 180 degrees Celsius. We're going to add it and we're going to cook it for 20 minutes. And once the 20 minutes are over, we're fit to remove it. There's been nice bubbling going on, you can see in the oven here, and when you take it out, you're going to have a nice crispy cheese coating on the breadcrumbs. Now, depends on how greedy you're going to be here, but you can either have 4 portions out of this, or you can have 6 portions. 6 portions wise is a nice good dinner size. It's not too large, it's not too small, but if you're feeling greedy one night, it can be split into 4 and you can have a slightly larger meal than maybe you would normally have. But otherwise, that's it. There we go, one lovely macaroni cheese. Not a difficult macaroni cheese to make, as I said at the beginning, at the introduction. It does have a few moving parts, again as I said at the beginning. Just make sure you get everything prepped and you're going to find this come together dead easy. Now you may be a little bit scared because I used vegan nut milk, you may be a little bit scared because I used the vegan butter. Nothing to be afraid of, they work perfectly and they work just exactly the same as if you were using dairy. You will have noticed I've not got vegan cheese. Unfortunately, vegan cheese is just still too expensive. I'm working on my own recipes for vegan cheese, but I'm not getting any success at what I like yet, so I'll keep pushing forward with the vegan cheeses until I've got what I like. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep buying dairy, unfortunately. So let's crack into this. Wee tomato as well. Let's grab a wee tomato. Absolutely lovely, absolutely gorgeous. Please make it. Try it with the vegan stuff that I've put in it, the nut milk, and with the actual vegan butter, because it's gorgeous. It's one of the nicest macaroni cheeses you're ever going to make. It's lovely. So take care, and we'll enjoy my dinner. Bye bye.